So you've got an idea for a WordPress product, but it's not a unique idea, and there are some impressive competitors in the same space. Is it worth even entering a crowded market? And if so, how can you win despite the competition?
This is WP Product Talk, a place where every week we bring you insights, product marketing, business management and growth, customer experience, product development, and more. It's your go-to podcast for WordPress product owners by WordPress product owners. And now, enjoy the show.
Hi, I'm Katy Keith, founder and CEO at Barn2 Plugins.
And I'm Matt Cromwell from StellarWP.
And today we're talking about how to make your product a success in a crowded marketplace. So this is the 12th episode of season 6 of WP Product Talk, and we're going to go through each stage of building a product step by step. We've already been through all of the early stages, how to find your product idea, lots of building tips on how to get the right product, but how do you actually market it if you've entered a competitive space? That's what we're going to talk about today.
And for that, we have a special guest and colleague of mine, Katy Bodkin, is here. Katy, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Can you tell the world a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, so I am one of the senior product marketing managers for StellarWP. I started out as just the product marketer for KadenceWP, the page, website, theme, and I'm sorry, can we edit that? No, we can't.
The cadence, all the things thing.
All the things, the theme, the website builder, all the things, excuse me. And yeah, so now I also manage 4 total brands. I do KadenceWP, SolidWP. I also do StellarSites and StellarPay. So a lot of marketing for several different products in the WordPress space.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm really glad you're here. And Kadence is amazing. What you've been doing has been really, really great and fun. And I think it's Kadence in particular is a great product to be talking about in this whole concept of marketing in a crowded space. I think there's no more crowded space in WordPress than themes and page builders, honestly. But yeah.
Yeah. And one thing to note about my story is that I was actually a customer for several years, long before I became a part of the marketing team. So I've been building websites using Kadence, the theme, the page builder, all of the additional plugins as well. And so it was like a natural fit for me to just step into marketing because I was already doing it and building my own business on the back of Kadence. So kind of a unique perspective there from maybe some other product owners, but one that we'll probably dive into a little bit more as we have more conversations together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I think Kadence is such an interesting example because it's such a competitive space and it seemed to come out of nowhere. But as you say, we'll get onto that more a bit later. So to start off, why do you think that new product owners should be thinking about this area at all and how to be seen in a competitive space?
I think one concern a lot of new product owners might have is that why even get started if it's too crowded and I can't compete at all? And I think of the analogy of like, okay, well, why would another Starbucks build another coffee shop on another corner? Well, it's just location, proximity. You have something to offer to that part of the world. And I think the same is true for you. If you have an idea, if you have a solution to a very real problem for someone in the WordPress ecosystem, there is no reason to not try to get started. So the fact that it's competitive means that you might have a little bit more work cut out for you, but I think it takes just a little bit of grit and you can get there. And I just want you to know that customers have a lot of options and short attention spans as well. So if you don't make it easy for them to understand why you're the right fit, they're going to move on fast. So good marketing isn't always about shouting louder necessarily, although sometimes that can help. It's often about being the clearest, most compelling option in the room as well.
I like that a lot.
So do you think it's even worth somebody with low resources, like a bootstrapped product founder, bothering with a competitive market? Do you think you can get seen, or is that more suitable for people with funding? And we actually did an episode in the previous season about how to get funding for your product in order to scale. Do you think it's worth it on a smaller scale?
I do. I mean, the thing is, what problem are you passionate about solving? If ultimately you feel like some other bigger guy is going to come and squash me anyway, then there's your answer. You're probably not going to wind up being resilient in the space. But if you genuinely believe that the problem that you are solving with your WordPress product is meaningful and can make a difference, and you need the whole world to know about it, I think you'll go to any length in order for it to succeed. So it's really a mindset issue more than anything. Because I mean, why would anyone who has been at the bottom feeder like make it to the top in any industry? Ultimately, you've got to have the grit, you've got to have the right mindset, but you can push through. And I think it's worth it inside of this space. And we'll have even more tips here in a little while about maybe strategies that we could deploy from a marketing perspective. But yes, it's definitely worth it. But ultimately, you have to decide if you have the grit inside of you in order to push through and persevere.
I agree with that 100%. I think there's also an element to which really smart product builders, product owners, know that they can't be all things to all people. And if you really try to be all things to all people, you end up kind of like failing everyone in a different way and different levels. And because you are specifically trying to target a specific type of customer or a specific type of audience, that means that there are gaps in what you're offering. In many ways, I could think through each of the Stellar products. The events calendar, for example, it's a very robust environment that can do all kinds of event things. And sometimes you need something really, really simple. Now, I think the events calendar is also really good if you just need a really simple calendar. But there's lots of other calendars out there that do things really, really basically, really simply. We actually had a guest here who's the author of Pi Calendar. It's really interesting. Even GiveWP, if you really want to make sure that you are a nonprofit organization that's doing serious funding, you want to know who your donors are, all that kind of thing, that's great. If you're like, no, I just need like a Patreon type coffee tip jar kind of thing, maybe you're going to choose something different. There's always some gaps in the market that you can fill in one way or another based on the type of audience that you're focusing on.
Yeah, well, let's get a bit more specific then and move on to story time. So, Katy, could you dive a bit deeper into a specific product that you've helped to grow within a crowded marketplace?
Sure, we can talk specifically about Kadence. As I was mentioning before, I was a customer, and I was a happy customer for the last 3 years, building my own business as a website designer, boutique agency on the back of Kadence. So even in this particular example, I like to think about product owners, small product owners. My question for you is, are you using the product that you're trying to market and sell yourself? Because I have that experience of being that customer at the beginning. Once I came on to marketing, I knew the product deeply, which helped me launch into a more successful position a lot faster than I think someone who doesn't have that product knowledge would. So to know your product intimately and deeply, and to also use it in certain applications, is really vital, and something that I don't know that everyone does. Sometimes when you are building a product, you are really trying to think about, okay, I built it, it's really cool, but then you don't have these outside perspectives of, okay, but what about this situation? This doesn't work for me. And, oh, I've been using it, but this particular thing does. So one example is at Kadence, we love to say that we are a code-free builder, right? But there are instances where I hit a limitation and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to write a little bit of custom code in order to do what I want it to do. So when I came on board, I was like, hey, this is something that I think is a mismatch in our marketing. We're saying we're a code-free tool, but I have to actually write a piece of code in order to do this this thing, I think that's a quick win. We should try to improve upon that. And so if you're not intimately using your own product in some sort of way to market your own business, side business, or even know someone who's actively using your product, I think that's really interesting and something to step into a little bit.
100%. Absolutely. Barn2, Katie, I have a question for you. You're actually trying to enter the crowded space of Shopify at the moment. Was that something you wanted to talk about at all in this context? I mean, you're trying to find the right niche there, right?
Yeah, well, I'm feeling bad now because Katie's advice is to use your own products, and I've actually not done that very much because our store does not run on WooCommerce, and most of our plugins are WooCommerce. We had experience of it from building client sites previously, and then since we started building plugins, we've got experience of what our clients want, feature requests and things like that. So we haven't had those pain points directly. I have not run a WooCommerce store ever as a user. So it's really great if you've got a product that you can, what I recently discovered is called dog food. I did not know that.
Yeah.
But that's not something I do, and I've managed to grow products without that. And then the situation is even worse with my current move into Shopify because I know even less about that than WordPress. So I've been doing things like trying to apply my WooCommerce knowledge to Shopify instead of actually having that experience as a Shopify merchant. But with regards to your question, Matt, yeah, I've been researching niches within Shopify. Shall we move into my story time now? Then? So when we first started selling WordPress products, I did not enter a crowded marketplace. I did the exact opposite and found products that had no competition whatsoever. I did that through things like looking at client feature requests. So if we were building a project for a web design client, like a custom plugin, we might release that as a plugin. That's where our post table plugins came from, which lists different post types in a table. And that's led to various products just from a client project, and also from looking at online feature requests and forums, which is where our really specific WooCommerce password protected categories plugin came from. So that is not a crowded marketplace. And by doing that, we were able to start making sales when there was no competition. So I just published something on our blog and we would get sales because nobody else was optimizing for that. So if you can find gaps, that's kind of the opposite strategy. But over time, we've become more confident. So as we've got, say, better domain authority, we are better at knowing how to rank for different keywords. We have got more competitive. And for example, our last couple of WooCommerce plugins were things like discount management, which is very competitive, like dynamic pricing, and product options, which is also very competitive. So, and we've made those products successful too. So for me, I didn't have that confidence that Katie is talking about initially, but I moved up to that. And with the Shopify, I'm trying to go kind of middle competitiveness because I don't have that foothold in the Shopify market, but I am an experienced software product seller. So I'd say if you have that confidence, go for it now. If not, then there are other ways.
Yeah, I think that's actually a beautiful way to market as well. And I would say somewhat of a way that I got started with my own even design business. When I got started, it was like you took on one client and one client led to another and to another. And you stacked all these testimonials that gave you proof of why you should be in this space. And so I think also if you can focus on who you're serving and know them intimately well, even if you yourself aren't using your product, is another way to approach that the same way that Katie is doing in her product. So sometimes you're going to approach that imposter syndrome as you're building a product for the first time. I don't know if that's a sometimes. I think that might be a guarantee. And as you're going through it, you just have to stack evidence that you deserve to be in this space. You have client testimonials that are proving that this is exactly like you're meeting a need and or you're serving them in a really meaningful way. And I think going after those smaller wins too, of like approaching it with a smaller keyword that you're going to target, and then branching into other more competitive spaces is also a really beautiful strategy. So kudos to you, Katie, for doing that approach too.
Absolutely. I'll share a little bit from my side of things. Honestly, with GiveWP, we felt like we entered into a wide open slot in the market when it was launched, in terms of that there was no strong, singular, dedicated donation plugin for WordPress at the time. There were lots of donation solutions out there, and most of them were 4 or 5 figure costs just to get up and running correctly. And that was definitely an area in which folks were like, we need a low cost option or a zero cost option for our WordPress website. And so it was a big open market. But one perspective I do have is that over time, that market became extremely crowded, not only in terms of the WordPress space starting to have a little bit more competition there, but the SaaS space got extremely competitive when it came to our customer base over time. And at this point right now, all of the big SaaSes that have a lot of funding, who are doing big, giant $1 million VC rounds, are our biggest, most important competitors that we're having to compete against. And in that circumstance, what we have to lean in on the most is laser focus on what distinguishes us from those platforms, and laser focus on why people continue to choose our platform. I feel like especially in the product space, when you start to see competition where you actually start to get feedback of like, hey, I need a refund because I don't want this anymore because I'm going to go to one of your competitors, it can make you really, really anxious. And then you're like starting to chase features down. What do I need to do to be competitive again against those people? And you're like, feature. I don't know that that's always the solution. Sometimes it really is all about reflecting and doubling down on where you already win, and just continuing to emphasize those aspects more. GiveWP, for example, is for sure the way that you can make the most beautiful donation forms, the most customizable donation forms, the best way to integrate it into your website to emphasize the branding and increase donation loyalty. And it's also probably the least cost at the end of the day for the feature set plus what it's doing. So the more that we've leaned in on those things, the more we continue to see customers choose us. Not every single customer, we're not perfect for every single one of them, but the ones who need exactly what we have to offer, they continue to choose us today. Another really good example I'll give really shortly is SolidWP, and specifically Solid Security. That the security space is very competitive in the WordPress space. WordPress needs security desperately. It has like basic, super easy security at the core level, but there's lots of space and lots of room and lots of necessity for dedicated WordPress app-based security. WordFence is, of course, like the largest competitor to Solid Security, and they do a lot of things really smartly. They really lean in on their community in a really major way. They have a lot of a large vulnerability database. But Solid over time has really decided to focus in on user security, passkeys, trusted devices, leaning in on how to prevent security issues from happening in the first place, which is, everyone knows that generally speaking, your website's going to get hacked because your password is admin123. And so leaning in on all of that as much as possible has really helped Solid Security to differentiate itself in the market, and really cater to the folks who want to harden their WordPress security as much as possible. I think that kind of differentiation and knowing who your audience is the approach that I've seen win over and over again, personally.
That's great. Yeah, this is not a WordPress example, but one company that comes to mind that has done this really beautifully is 37 Signals, who owns, I think, Basecamp and the Hey products. And they have vehemently said, we are not going to build most of the features a lot of loud customers are wanting, which I think is an interesting approach. And they've doubled down on it, and they know exactly who they are. So that's really interesting, and something that you might want to consider as well as you go into marketing your product. Know what you stand for, know what your values are, know what you do really well, double down on those, like Matt was saying, and see how that works out for you.
Love it.
And that leads us really nicely to a question that we've had, which is related to that, actually. So Dave is asking about features versus benefits. If your audience is more technical, such as site admins, would you focus on it solves pain points A, B, C instead of save 1 hour a week, which is more consumer focused? What do you think, Katie?
I think this question requires some more context. Because features versus benefits, there's a time and a place in your marketing to talk about both, right? So it depends on the context. Is this for a social media post? Is this for a sales page? Is this for your tech specs page where more technical customers need that information? So I think if you're trying to move someone to conversion, you do need to primarily focus on the benefit to the customer. But sometimes you have to talk about the vehicle in which you're going to deliver on that promise, which are those features. So I would say it's not an either or, it's usually a both and it's knowing when to use those strategically in your marketing messages that will have the biggest impact for you. One thing that I would say is a big downfall in a lot of people's marketing is that they say, come buy my product because it does ABC, but why would the customer care? There is like what's in it for me is usually the primal question that your audience member is asking themselves at all. And so I think that's really important to stay focused on. Why would a user care about any of the stuff that you're talking about? If you can paint it in that way and then also pair in those features, I think that's a winning formula.
Yeah, love it. I had a great conversation with Derek Aschauer at PressConf last week. He's the author of Sun Photocart originally, and now he has a new product called Conversion Bridge, which is really interesting. But Conversion Bridge is a product that you kind of have to educate people on why you need it. And so his tactic, generally speaking, is a lot more benefits focused because the features are things like connect your WordPress website to Google Analytics and see stuff in your dashboard. And like nobody's looking for that kind of feature in general. It's not true that nobody is, but that's less of the need they're looking for. But like get better data accuracy on your conversions for your website, like that's really interesting. Being able to compare your AdWords data to your Google Analytics data, that's really interesting. Those types of benefits, I think, are really interesting. They are the result of features that he's built into his product. And so just like Katie was saying, I think that education piece and the right context is super important.
Yeah, I think it also depends a lot on what sort of what your marketing strategy is and how crowded the market is. So with my early products, for example, they were the only thing on the market that did what the people were searching for. Like, I want to password protect a WooCommerce product category. At the time, there was nothing doing that. So I didn't need to tell them how warm and friendly they'd feel inside. I just needed to tell them, this is a really easy way to password protect your categories. So when there isn't tons of competition and people are actively searching for features, then I think that features actually do come before benefits, and benefits are just a reassurance, like your website should look competent and professional so that they get those unconscious positive signals. Whereas with something like Conversion Bridge, that's a really interesting point, Matt, that you need to put benefits first because you need to convince them of the need for the product. But also people are probably not actively searching for it, as you say. So that leads to a completely different marketing strategy.
100%.
And that's actually very close to Dave's administrator toolkit, I think it's called, where it's going to save loads of time for people that manage multiple websites, but they're not necessarily searching for that because they don't know it exists. They don't know there's something that will look for broken links or whatever else it does. It does lots of things. So yeah, that's the challenge, how to educate somebody that they need something.
I love this about our podcast and our community. I call it a podcast, whatever it is we're doing here. And our community, that like a guy named Friendly Web Guy UK can come up, and Katie knows exactly who this is, his real name and his project. This is great. We're glad you're here, Dave, by the way. So Excellent. So ready for some best advice? Is that where we're headed next?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think we both clicked that at the same time. Yeah, let's go into a bit more depth with the best
Okay,
advice,
cool.
because I think that we should give some more advice on how to be seen in a crowded market, like specifics. So maybe we could expand the best advice in terms of, you've got a product that's quite competitive. How do you actually get it seen? Like, what sort of marketing should you do? Should you even bother with organic SEO, for example, go straight to ads? So let's go into specifics a bit.
Yeah.
Sure.
Who's first?
You go first.
I'll go first. And when it comes to like the crowded marketplace, I feel like I've been sprinkling in my best advice the whole way along the way. I do think that and this is something I've said on the show so many times. I do think that your existing customers are the Bible for how you're going to understand your path forward, both in terms of what you're missing and what you need to double down on. So we actually had a subject that we didn't really get to cover in depth, all about customer feedback and how to log it, how to process it, how to action it. That's something that I've been leaning in on the Stellar side for forever. But the whole ability to not just anecdotally know what's going on with your customers, a lot of folks, the Kadence team, Katie and the whole Kadence team, they kind of have this like baked into their DNA over there. They're all paying attention to customers all the time. But there's also a way in which we all have this instinct about what our customers are saying and feeling. And we're not wrong about those things, but it is still anecdotal until you actually are logging feedback consistently, like daily, and then can see how certain things bubble up to the top. Even folks who really are paying attention to customers all the time through tickets or social media or groups or things like that, you don't know what actually is demanding the most attention until you're actually logging things really well. And especially if you have like a public feedback board, we at Stellar have adopted a system called Feature OS, which I love. It's been really, really an excellent experience overall. It gives our customers the ability to just tell us their feedback directly without us having to log it ourselves personally. The Kadence team, they do that all the time. They love to tell us what they think regularly and loudly sometimes. And they go straight to the board and they upvote things. And those upvotes are incredibly significant. So if you have a crowded marketplace, your customers are going to tell you exactly what you need to do to make them even happier, and all of the people that are like them that are not yet your customer. My personal take is always best advice: listen, log, and action every single thing that comes into your queue in one way or another.
That's really good. I also think that if it depends on like where the marketer is at their stage, or the product owner is at the stage. Like if you have just coded something and you're genuinely wondering, where do I go from here? Don't sleep on Facebook groups or Discord groups. Those are where usually the most conversations are happening, even in like Reddit forums. If you can be valuable in those spaces where there's already community happening, you can insert your product into the conversation in a very genuine way, an authentic way, not some like salesy, intrusive way. But that is a really great way to kind of have that grassroots of starting to get some people to use your product. I also think trying to allow someone to beta test something for you and give you feedback, even if you don't have a base of customers yet who are actively using your product and wanting to give you feedback right away, is also an interesting strategy. Organic SEO is still there. It's still relevant, even though AI is changing the game for things.
Yeah.
So, there is a piece of that. But if you are a beginner, is your primary marketing strategy going to be, let's go do a big, giant organic SEO campaign? I don't know. I think I would probably go a little bit more grassroots and get into those forums, get into communities, like try to build those relationships. The WordPress ecosystem is actually not that big. It can feel like it's pretty massive considering it powers millions and millions of websites. But for those who are genuinely building products in WordPress, it's a pretty tight ecosystem. And if you network in those groups, it can make a really big difference for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Love that.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice about the organic SEO side of things. It's definitely not dead. I still get the vast majority of my sales that way, but I built mine up over years, starting niche, as I said earlier, and then building upwards. So we actually did an episode on this earlier in the season about whether it's worth doing organic SEO in this day and age. So that's worth checking out. But I'm going to give some examples of other plugins that entered a very competitive marketplace and found success. And that builds on what Katy is saying about they found other routes to market, not necessarily the obvious things like Katy was saying about Facebook groups and online communities. So one example would be WS Form, and we've had the founder, Mark Westgard, on about this topic in the past, a year or two ago. And he has done a fantastic job because forms are so competitive. You've got such big competitors and so many of them. And I mean, I honestly would think he'd be crazy just as his first WordPress product, launching a form plugin. But actually, he has gained a reasonable market share and does well out of it. And he has done that by being respected within the WordPress community. He does sponsorships of WordCamps. He goes on podcasts. He meets people. They organize parties to appreciate their customers. They are in there with the community. And they also have a very high quality product that has features that some of the competitors don't. So he's carved out this little area for himself within a crowded market. And he's not doing it by things like organic SEO primarily. He's finding other ways in. Mm-hmm. And a slightly different example is somebody that I met last week at PressConf who has a different type of plugin that has loads of competitors and two ridiculously strong competitors. And again, I wouldn't want to go into that market. But what he has done is made his primary marketing strategy hosting partnerships. So he's negotiating with hosts to actually build his plugin into their core offerings, and he's doing well that way. So it's a completely different route to market than the stronger competition are doing. So I think that's really clever. If you're going into a competitive area, then find another angle, and that's your unique selling point, I suppose.
Those are great.
I do have a question for Katy, which is, it's really interesting that you were a Kadence user in the early days. So I'm interested in your perspective on how you chose Kadence, what attracted you to it in those days when it wasn't so huge, because there were so many themes and builders for you to choose from at that point.
Yes.
Question.
In interest, just for the record, it's thunderstorming. So if there's light flashes or you hear thunder, that's what that is. But when I got started, I wanted to do design. Like I had worked for another website design company that was doing like a proprietary theme previously. And so I wanted to take a stab at it myself, but I didn't know how to do, robust coding. Like I wasn't about to custom code anything because I didn't have that skill set at the time. So I started out with just one of the most popular page builders out there, drag and drop, super easy to use. But they had a release that really botched a lot of people's websites. It was a really bad PR experience. It was the 3.0 release. I remember that number specifically. And it made my life extremely challenging for my own website. And then Core Web Vitals became a really big thing and everyone cared about page speed. And then I kept hearing in Facebook groups that there was this tool called the Kadence theme. And I was like, okay, but I don't know how to do code. Like, is this really going to be a no code thing for me? So that's how I got introduced to it, really was being a part of communities. Also, after I worked at that other website company, I built my own blog and I sold it for a 5-figure price tag before I stepped into my own website design business. So I had a lot of experience of building my own website in a non-website design or SEO purpose. And so that was really interesting overall. I think it's it was really the communities that I was a part of, and the blogging groups and other things that really led me to Kadence. And then once I got in there, and then Kadence having its own community, I felt like I belonged, and I had a safe place to ask questions. And then from there, I was able to get the support that I needed. Not to mention, Kadence support team is incredible. I felt that way 3 years prior to being a customer, or like as a customer as well, not just now that I'm a part of the team and I actually get to know all of our support reps as well. Genuinely, they care about people. They're going to help us see solutions through. They would write custom code for me if I was stuck on something and didn't know how to do it. And I was just like floored that they would even do that. It feels like the answer would be, oh, well, that's beyond our scope. So that's kind of how I got involved with Kadence at all. And it was the fumble of someone else's ball that really kind of provided a gap for me to explore other solutions, because I was genuinely frustrated at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave has another follow-up comment here, which I think is super helpful, really emphasizing what Katie's highlighting here. He had an early mention for Administrator Toolkit in the Admin Bar Facebook group and made some early sales with a hefty discount as well. Honestly, the Facebook group promotion aspect is a little bit challenging, a little bit hairy sometimes. Things like this, specifically with the Admin Bar, really you have to go in and know the moderators and work with them often to have stuff like this happen in a Facebook group. But a lot of folks really just land in Facebook groups and are just generally helpful and without saying, I do this, I do that, DM me and I'll help you. None of that kind of thing. They just are like here and present and helpful and doing things. And if you actually are kind of like stand out helpful in a Facebook group, people will look up who you are. And then people will on their own want to reach out and say, like, everything you say in this group is helpful. It does what it works the way you say it does. I'd love to work with you. I'll tell you, that's exactly how I started. Way before I was with Give and everything, I had a Facebook group called the Advanced WordPress Facebook group. I was in San Diego, and all I did was ask dumb questions everywhere to promote conversation. And it was really, really helpful. It gave me a big start in my career as well. I honestly, in many ways, Stellar Katie, Kadence Katie, I almost want to bring you back on just to talk about Facebook groups, honestly, because I've seen a lot of products do Facebook groups. Give has a Facebook group as well. And 9 times out of 10, those Facebook groups are just a support channel. The Kadence one is different, and it does stand out as well as a different community. There is a lot of support in there for sure, and the way it's managed is really good. But the art of doing a product-oriented or web design-oriented Facebook group that actually is beneficial to the product or the product team in one way or another, man, I think that's an art. It's hard to do that.
One thing about the Facebook group, Adam Preeser was actually the one who started this group. And then through Ben's relationship with Adam was the one that was like, why doesn't Kadence take it over at the time? So it didn't even start as a, hey, let's all do this as the initial brand idea. It was a partnership. And again, it all comes back to relationships. I know you want to get your product sold and you want a sale, but at the heart of it, it's people that are building it. It's people that you're going to sell it to. So if you can really leverage those relationships as you're getting off the ground, it's really important. One other thing I wanted to share really quickly as best advice is that as I have just recently, or in the phases of launching StellarSites, we just finished wrapping up our early release. One thing that's been extremely valuable in going to market with a new product has been putting together a go-to-market strategy and also putting together a brand voice guideline and being very in-depth with that information and having almost like a Bible, to use Matt's word as well, of this is everything there is to know about our product. And also this is how we are not going to market our product. That's also something that was inside of my brand voice guidelines that I put together. So for instance, at StellarSites, we say that we make WordPress easier, but I wanted to emphasize that it's easier and not necessarily easy, which is easy to, get those words mixed around. But ultimately, the communication of we make it easier is different than saying that we straight up make it easy, because once the customer gets into WordPress, they still have the WordPress dashboard. And if they're overwhelmed by that in the past, we didn't necessarily solve that. We solved a different problem of onboarding, making it easier. So outlining how we wanted to talk about our products and how we did not want to talk about our products was very insightful. And then we circulated that throughout our organization. I know we're a larger organization, but even doing this for yourself is going to allow you to copy and paste those pieces of content and use them on your website or in marketing in other ways. And I never really thought of it from like that type of a corporate perspective of I have a go-to-market strategy and I have brand voice guidelines, especially if you're a small shop and it's like you and one other person. But ultimately, if you can get into the habit of doing that, it will make the rest of your marketing efforts significantly easier. And so that's another best advice tip I wanted to share.
Love it.
Yeah, I like that. And I read an interesting thing about all these documents that you produce, even if you're small, actually add to your valuation just as a side benefit. So things like having written down brand voice guidelines and handbooks and all of that, they're company assets. So it's worth doing them, if only for that kind of future benefit that you may want to bear in mind, because it does feel a bit strange if it's just you on your own and you're writing brand voice guidelines, but it helps you to hone your thoughts. And it is something for the future as well for other reasons.
And one other thing, if you're like, I don't even know where to start with that, go use some sort of AI tool and say, you are an expert brand voice creator, whatever the title would be, and help me create brand voice guidelines. What should I include in those? And it will give you a quick little outline. And then you're like, okay, I know what I need to structure and things like that. That's also just, if you have no idea where to start because marketing is not your forte, you can lean on some AI tools to help make your job a little bit easier. But of course, fine tuning and making sure it's your own words and your own voice. But using AI as a jump start is one of my favorite things to do.
100%.
Yeah. You know, another useful tip could be to use AI to analyze your current brand voice, because they have web access now, and you may find some things that you're not expecting, and that may help you to adjust how you come across in the future.
That's a really good one. That'd be really interesting, especially because you can also like upload your brand voice that you created and then say, hey, compare the actual website against what I have in my brand voice and find any weaknesses or missed spots. That's really fascinating. Brand voice auditing with AI. That's awesome.
Yeah,
we have like 5 different topics we brought up here in this one show.
Marketing is a big topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Okay, let's bring it all together. We're talking about the crowded marketplace topic. If you would just going to meet somebody and give them one piece of advice, what would the top thing be? Do you want to start, Matt?
Sure. I'll make mine into a sweet little nugget. Log and action every single piece of feedback you have and actually do it. Actually improve the product over time based on what customers are telling you to do.
Okay, Katie?
Man, it's hard to wrap it up into one little piece. Standing out in a crowded market, I would say listen intensely to your customers. I know that is counterintuitive, but genuinely what your customers are saying about you, about your products, and then being able to meet those needs and also communicate that you hear and you see them and you're willing to also take their feedback and then make decisions about it, I think is very, very important, even at an early stage. I don't know if that's the only advice, but that's the one that's coming to mind right now. Just pay attention to your customers deeply.
Yeah, well, you're only allowed one, so that's great. And I think my top one would be to choose marketing channels that you actually have a chance of success in. They may not be the most obvious ones that your competitors are doing, but with things like Facebook groups, the WordPress community, even hosting partnerships, anything that your competitors aren't doing, that might be your opportunity.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Well, that's a wrap. Katy, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you online?
Well, you can find us at StellarWP.com. You can also access all of our brands, but you can also find me on LinkedIn. Just look for Katy Bodkin on LinkedIn, and I can also provide a link as well to include in the show notes if we have that.
We do, and we will. Next week, we're going to be talking with Malthi SS about another important step of the journey to building and launching a WordPress product, which is how to recruit and hire a great team to support your product growth. So that's like the timeline of how we've been going through the show. You got the product launched, it's out there, you're marketing it in a crowded space, but now how do you actually have a team that's going to help it continue to grow over a long period of time?
Yeah, that's a nice problem to have and needing to grow as you grow your success. So special thanks to Post Status for being our green room. If you're enjoying these shows, then do us a favor and hit like, subscribe, share it with your friends, reference this show in your email newsletters, and don't forget to tune in again next week.